It all started with the smell of lavender soap. That's what I remember most about the morning everything fell apart. It wasn't some grand dramatic moment like you see in movies. No storm clouds rolling in or ominous music playing in the background. Just me, standing in front of the mirror, brushing my teeth and trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Something felt off, like the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something bad to happen. "Mia, hurry up," Liam called from the kitchen. "We're gonna be late." I rinsed my mouth and grabbed my bag, glancing at myself one last time before heading out. My reflection stared back at me, brown eyes wide with anxiety, dark curls pulled into a messy bun. I looked tired, exhausted even, but who wouldn't be? Planning a wedding is supposed to be stressful, right? At least that's what everyone kept telling me. What they didn't tell me was how suffocating it could feel when your fiancé's mother made it clear she thought you weren't good enough. Liam's mom, Patricia, had always been difficult. From the moment we met, she'd sized me up like a piece of furniture she wasn't sure fit her decor. Too loud, too opinionated, not polished enough. Her disapproval was subtle at first. A raised eyebrow here, a backhanded compliment there, but over time, it became impossible to ignore. Every family dinner turned into a minefield of passive-aggressive comments about my career. "Oh, event planning must be so rewarding." Or my upbringing. "You grew up in the city. How interesting." At first I tried to brush it off. Who cares what she thinks? Liam loves me. That's all that matters, right? But as the wedding plans progressed, her criticisms grew louder, sharper. She questioned every decision I made. The venue, the flowers, even the color of the bridesmaids' dresses. And Liam? He just stood there, nodding along like he agreed with her. "Can we talk about this later?" he'd say whenever I brought it up. "Mom's just stressed. Don't take it personally." Don't take it personally? Sure, because having someone dissect your life choices like they're critiquing a bad movie isn't personal at all. That morning, we were meeting Patricia at her house to finalize the seating arrangements for the reception. As we drove, I fiddled nervously with the hem of my sweater, replaying our last conversation in my head. "You know," Liam said suddenly, breaking the silence, "maybe we should let Mom handle the seating chart. She's got experience with these things." I shot him a look. "Seriously? After everything she said about my friends being too boisterous? No way." He sighed, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "Come on, Mia. Can't you just trust her for once?" Trust her? The woman who'd spent months making it painfully obvious she didn't approve of me? Yeah, no thanks. When we arrived, Patricia greeted us with her usual air of superiority, a perfectly tailored pantsuit, pearls around her neck, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ah, darling," she said, kissing Liam on the cheek. Then turning to me, "Mia, so glad you could join us." Her tone was polite, but there was an edge to it, a reminder that I was tolerated, not welcomed. We sat down at the dining table, where stacks of index cards and highlighters were laid out like battle plans. "So," Patricia began, shuffling through the cards, "I've taken the liberty of organizing the tables. Your friends will sit near the back, away from the main guests. Less disruption that way." My jaw dropped. "Excuse me?" She blinked innocently. "Well, dear, I assumed you'd want them comfortable. They're more casual, aren't they?" Casual? Was she seriously calling my best friends uncivilized? That's not fair. I snapped, leaning forward. "They're part of my life, Patricia. You can't just shove them into a corner because they don't fit your mold." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm only trying to ensure the evening runs smoothly. Perhaps if you'd chosen guests who understood proper etiquette." "Enough," Liam interrupted, his voice sharp. For a second I thought he was defending me, but then he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Mia, maybe Mom has a point. We need to keep everyone happy." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Keep everyone happy? Did he really think placating his mother was more important than supporting me? The rest of the meeting passed in a haze of tension and clipped responses. By the time we left, I was seething. "How could you side with her?" I demanded as soon as we got in the car. "Your own mother treating me like I'm some kind of charity case. She's just looking out for us," Liam replied, his voice tight. "Why do you always have to make such a big deal out of everything? Make a big deal? Oh, hell no. I'm sorry," I shot back, sarcasm dripping from every word, "but apparently my entire existence is a problem for your perfect little family." He groaned, rubbing his temples. "You're overreacting. Again." And that was it. The final straw. Overreacting. Again. Like every fight we'd ever had was somehow my fault. "Fine," I said coldly, staring out the window. "Whatever." That night, Liam came home late. I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone, pretending not to notice him tiptoeing around like he hoped I'd already gone to bed. "We need to talk," he said finally, sinking onto the armchair across from me. His face was pale, his hands clasped tightly together. "What now?" I muttered, refusing to look at him. He hesitated, then blurted, "I think we should call off the wedding." Time stopped. My heart froze mid-beat, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. "What did you just say?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I can't do this anymore, Mia," he continued, avoiding my gaze. "It's too much pressure, from work, from Mom, from everything. I thought I could handle it, but what?" I interrupted, anger bubbling to the surface. "You couldn't handle having a fiancé who doesn't meet your mom's ridiculous standards?" "It's not like that," he insisted, though his voice wavered. I don't think we're ready." "Ready? We'd been together for 3 years, planned a future together, chosen China patterns and honeymoons. moon. Destinations. You're breaking up with me because of your mom, I stated flatly, tears stinging my eyes. Admit it. He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked away, guilt written all over his face. Later that night, after he'd left, because of course he couldn't stay, I curled up on the floor of my empty apartment, hugging my knees to my chest. The echoes of his words bounced around in my head, each one slicing deeper than the last. Not good enough, not ready, not enough. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. Anger. Pure, unfiltered rage. How dare he throw away everything we'd built because his mother didn't think I measured up? How dare he let her dictate our lives? As dawn broke outside my window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I made a silent promise to myself. I would survive this. I would rise above it. And someday, I'd prove to both of them exactly who I was and why I deserved better. The days that followed felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold from behind a glass wall. Friends called, texts poured in, but none of it stuck to me. People kept saying things like, he didn't deserve you, or you're better off without him, but those words felt hollow, like cheap bandages slapped over a gaping wound. They couldn't fix the fact that the person I'd trusted most had walked away because his mom decided I wasn't good enough. And then there was the shame. Oh God, the shame. It clung to me like static electricity, making every interaction awkward and heavy. At work, colleagues whispered behind their hands when they thought I wasn't looking. Grocery store clerks gave me pitying smiles as if my breakup was tattooed across my forehead. Even strangers seemed to know something was wrong. That invisible aura of failure radiating off me like heat waves on asphalt. Ellie, my best friend since college, showed up at my door unannounced 2 days after the breakup. She marched inside without waiting for an invitation, carrying a bag full of junk food and wine coolers. All right, spill it, she demanded, plopping down on my couch with all the grace of a bulldozer. What exactly happened? So I told her everything. From Patricia's constant jabs about my lifestyle, really dear, does anyone actually need 6 pairs of black boots? To Liam's inability or unwillingness to stand up to her. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face and Ellie looked ready to commit murder. That spineless coward, she growled, slamming her fist against the coffee table hard enough to make the remote jump. How could he do this to you? To you, Mia, you're amazing. Her outrage made me laugh despite myself, a watery, hiccuping sound that came out more like a sob. Thanks, Elle, but let's be real here. His mom never wanted me in the first place. And honestly, maybe she's right. Nope, Ellie cut me off before I could spiral further into self-doubt. Do not even go there. That woman is toxic, and Liam letting her dictate your relationship proves how messed up he is. Not you. I wanted to believe her, desperately, but doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind like termites eating through wood. Had I been naive to think love could conquer all, or had I simply misjudged Liam's character? Work became both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it gave me something to focus on besides the wreckage of my personal life. On the other, it forced me to face people who either pitied me or judged me, or worse, tried to offer unsolicited advice. You need closure, my coworker Sarah said during lunch one day, twirling her fork absently. Call him. Talk it out. Why should I? I snapped, maybe sharper than intended. So he can explain again why I'm not good enough? Thanks, but no thanks. Sarah raised her hands defensively. Hey, I'm just saying. Sometimes talking helps. Talking wouldn't help. Not this time. Because deep down, I knew what Liam would say if I confronted him. It'd be some variation of, it's complicated, or, I didn't mean to hurt you. Empty platitudes designed to make him feel less guilty while leaving me just as broken. But avoiding reality only worked for so long. Eventually, the outside world caught up with me, in the form of social media notifications. A photo popped up on Instagram. Liam, smiling awkwardly next to Patricia at some charity gala. The caption read, spending quality time with mom. My stomach churned. Family first. Right, clearly, I'd never really been part of that equation. Then came another post. A selfie of Liam and his younger sister Sophie captioned, sibling bonding. No mention of me. No trace of the woman he'd once promised to spend his life with. It was like I'd been erased completely. Wiped clean from his narrative. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, anger bubbling hotter with each passing second. How dare he move on so quickly? Act like nothing had changed? Like I hadn't mattered at all? Before I could stop myself, I tapped out a scathing comment under the sibling photo. Glad to see you're enjoying your newfound freedom. Hope it was worth losing yourself over. As soon as I hit send, regret slammed into me like a freight train. What was I doing? Stooping to petty revenge tactics wouldn't solve anything. If anything, it made me look bitter and immature. The exact image Patricia had painted of me. I deleted the comment immediately. But the damage was done. My reflection stared back at me from my phone screen, eyes red-rimmed and cheeks flushed with embarrassment. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of person who lashed out online. So why did it feel so satisfying? That night, sleep eluded me entirely. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every argument, every insult, every moment of betrayal. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I grabbed my laptop and opened a blank document. Writing had always been my therapy, a way to untangle the mess inside my head, and tonight I needed it more than ever. Dear Liam, I don't know where to start, or maybe I do, but I'm afraid of what I'll uncover if I dig too deep, so I'll keep it simple. Why? Why did you choose her over me? Over us? Was it fear? Guilt? Some misplaced sense of duty? For 3 years, I believed in you. In us. I thought we were building something real, something strong enough to withstand anything. But now I realize I was wrong. Your loyalty doesn't belong to me. It belongs to her, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you're happier this way. But don't pretend you're doing it for the right reasons. Don't act like breaking my heart was somehow noble or justified. Because it wasn't. It was selfish, cowardly, cruel. Goodbye, Liam. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But please don't expect me to wait around while you figure it out. I didn't send the letter. Instead, I saved it to my desktop, naming the file Unsent Letters. Something about putting my thoughts into words helped ease the chaos swirling inside me. It was cathartic, like screaming into a pillow or punching a wall, but without the bruises. By the end of the week, I'd developed a routine. Wake up, cry in the shower, go to work, avoid eye contact with everyone, come home, cry some more, repeat endlessly. It wasn't healthy, but it was predictable. Predictability felt safe in a world that had suddenly become unpredictable. One evening, as I scrolled aimlessly through Netflix, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from an unknown number blinked onto the screen. Mia, it's Sophie. We need to talk. Sophie? Of all people, why would Liam's sister want to reach out to me? Curiosity warred with caution, but ultimately, curiosity won. What do you want? I replied curtly. She responded almost instantly, not over text. Can we meet tomorrow? Coffee, please? Against my better judgment, I agreed. The cafe was crowded. When I arrived, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans and sugary pastries, Sophie sat near the window, nervously twisting a strand of blonde hair around her finger. When she saw me, she stood up, offering a hesitant smile. Thanks for coming, she said softly, gesturing for me to sit. I know this is awkward. Yeah, I muttered, sliding into the chair across from her. You could say that. She fidgeted with her cup, clearly uncomfortable. Look, I don't know where to start, except I'm sorry for everything. Sorry? From her? This was unexpected. For what? I asked, narrowing my eyes. You weren't the one who dumped me. No, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. But I saw how Mom treated you, how Liam let her, and I didn't say anything. I should have stood up for you. Her apology caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to tell her she was too late, that apologies couldn't undo the pain her family had caused. But another part, the part that still craved validation, wondered if maybe she was sincere. So why are you telling me this now? I pressed, leaning forward. What's changed? She hesitated, then sighed heavily. Because I realized something. Losing you wasn't just hard on Liam, it was hard on me too. You were the sister I never had. And seeing how easily Mom pushed you away, it made me question everything. About our family, about him. Her words hung in the air between us, raw and honest. For the first time since the breakup, I felt seen. Not as the girl who got left behind, but as someone who mattered. Someone worth fighting for. Maybe, just maybe, healing could start here. Sophie's confession lingered in my mind long after. Our coffee date ended. It wasn't forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that. But it was a start. A crack in the wall of bitterness I'd built around myself, letting a sliver of light seep through. For the first time since Liam walked away, I felt like someone understood how much his betrayal had hurt. Not just me, but us. The family we might have been. Still, understanding didn't erase the pain. Moving forward meant confronting the wreckage head-on, piece by jagged piece. And that process was anything but easy. Ellie became my unofficial therapist during those weeks, dragging me out of bed on mornings when even breathing felt like too much effort. She forced me to join her at yoga classes. It'll clear your chakras or whatever. And insisted we binge-watch trashy reality TV shows late into the night. Nothing heals a broken heart like watching rich people fight over yachts. You're allowed to be sad, she said one evening as we sprawled on my couch, surrounded by empty ice cream cartons and crumpled tissues. But you're not allowed to stay stuck. Got it? Got it, I mumbled, though truthfully, stuck felt like home right now. Safe, predictable, easier than facing the world outside these four walls. But Ellie refused to let me wallow indefinitely. One Saturday morning, she showed up at my apartment armed with workout clothes and an unshakable determination. We're going hiking, she announced, tossing a pair of leggings onto my bed. No arguments. Hiking? I repeated incredulously. You know I hate hiking, right? Bugs, dirt, sweat, and fresh air, sunshine, endorphins, she countered, hands on hips. Come on, Mia. You've been cooped up in here for weeks. You need this. She was right, of course. So begrudgingly, I changed into the gear she'd brought and climbed into her car. The trailhead was about 30 minutes outside the city, a winding path through dense woods that smelled faintly of pine and damp earth. As we started walking, the silence between us stretched comfortably, broken only by the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional chirp of birds overhead. By the time we reached the summit, my legs burned and my lungs ached, but so did something else. Something deeper. Standing there, looking out over the sprawling valley below, I realized how small my problems seemed compared to the vastness of the world around me. Sure, Liam had hurt me, Patricia had dismissed me, but none of that defined who I was, or who I could become. Feel better? Ellie asked, nudging me with her elbow. I nodded slowly, a tentative smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Yeah, weirdly, yes. As spring gave way to summer, I threw myself into work with renewed focus. My boss noticed the shift, pulling me aside one afternoon to praise my recent projects. You've really turned things around, she said, leaning against her desk. ask, whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it. Her words caught me off guard, not because they were unexpected, but because they reminded me of something important. I was capable, talented, resilient. Even without Liam, I could still build a life worth living. That realization sparked another idea, one I'd been too afraid to consider before now. What if losing him wasn't the end of my story? What if it was the beginning of something new? One Friday evening, Sophie invited me to dinner at her apartment. At first, I hesitated. Spending time with Liam's sister felt like stepping back into a chapter of my life I wasn't sure I wanted to revisit. But curiosity, and maybe a little hope, won out. When I arrived, Sophie greeted me warmly, ushering me inside with a glass of wine already poured. "I hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing toward the table set for two. "I figured we could use some girl time." We spent hours talking about everything and nothing, work, hobbies, childhood memories. Slowly, tentatively, we began to rebuild the bond that had shattered along with my engagement. By the end of the night, I found myself laughing genuinely for the first time in months. "This is nice," I admitted as we cleaned up the dishes together. "I missed having someone to talk to." "Me too," she replied softly. Then, after a pause, "Do you think maybe someday you'd want to meet Dad?" Her question caught me off guard. Meeting Liam's father felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. But Sophie's expression, earnest, hopeful, made me reconsider. "Why?" I asked cautiously. "What's he like?" She smiled faintly. "He's different from Mom, quieter, kinder. He never agreed with the way she treated you. Different from Patricia." That alone intrigued me enough to say yes. The meeting took place a few weeks later at a quiet cafe downtown. Mr. Carter, James as he insisted I call him, was nothing like I'd imagined. Tall, silver-haired, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. There was no judgment in his gaze, no hint of the disdain Patricia had always shown me. "I owe you an apology," he said after we exchanged pleasantries, "for not speaking up sooner, about Patricia, about Liam." His honesty disarmed me. "Why didn't you?" He sighed heavily, stirring sugar into his tea. "Because sometimes love makes us blind. Patricia has her ways, her expectations. And Liam, well, he's always struggled to stand up to her. Love makes us blind." The phrase resonated deeply, echoing truths I'd been reluctant to confront. Love had blinded Liam to his mother's toxicity, to my needs, to the damage he was causing. But maybe it had also blinded me to his flaws, to the warning signs, to the possibility that we weren't as perfect together as I'd believed. "What happens now?" I asked quietly, voicing a question I'd been asking myself for months. "That's up to you," James replied gently. "But know this, you deserve better. Better than Patricia's opinions. Better than Liam's indecision. Better than anyone who can't see your worth." His words stayed with me long after we parted ways, lingering like sunlight filtering through storm clouds. Maybe I couldn't change the past, but I could shape the future. And that thought filled me with a quiet sense of power. Over the next several weeks, I began making changes. Not drastic ones, but meaningful ones. I signed up for painting classes I'd always been too intimidated to try. I reconnected with old friends I'd drifted away from during my relationship with Liam. I even started volunteering at a local animal shelter, finding solace in the unconditional affection of rescue dogs. Each step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a version of Mia that existed before Liam, before Patricia, before the weight of their expectations crushed me. And then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "From Liam." My finger hovered over the delete button, trembling slightly. Did I really want to open it? To risk reopening wounds that were finally starting to heal? But curiosity got the better of me. With a deep breath, I clicked. "Mia, I don't expect you to forgive me. Honestly, I don't blame you if you never do. But I needed to write this anyway, to explain however imperfectly why I made the choices I did. Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I wanted to, but because I convinced myself it was necessary. Necessary for my mom, for my family, for me. But looking back now, I realize how wrong I was, how selfish, how cowardly. You deserved better than what I gave you. Better than silence, better than excuses. If there's any chance, even the smallest chance that you'd be willing to hear me out, please let me know. If not, I understand. Either way, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting the day I let you go." Liam reading his words stirred emotions I thought I'd buried. Anger, sadness, longing. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to demand answers or closure. Another part, the stronger, wiser part, knew I didn't owe him anything. So I closed the email and walked away. Whatever Liam had to say, it no longer mattered. My life was mine again, and this time, I planned to live it on my own terms. Summer melted into fall, and with it came a shift in the air. Not just the crispness of cooling temperatures or the golden hue of changing leaves, but something deeper, a sense of renewal, of possibility. For months, I'd been untangling myself from the wreckage of my past relationship, picking through shards of pain and disappointment to find pieces of who I was before Liam, and discovering new facets of myself along the way. But healing isn't linear. Some days I felt unstoppable, like I could take on the world with nothing but sheer determination and a killer playlist. Other days, the weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me so hard I struggled to get out of bed. Those were the days when Ellie would show up unannounced with coffee and sarcasm, dragging me back into the land of the living one snarky comment at a time. "You're allowed to have bad days," she reminded me once, handing me a latte as we sat on my fire escape watching the sunset. "But don't let them turn into bad weeks." Her words stuck with me, a mantra whispered during moments when self-doubt crept stepped in, because even though I was rebuilding, there were still cracks in my foundation. Cracks left by Patricia's cutting remarks and Liam's ultimate betrayal. And while I couldn't erase those scars, I could choose how they shaped me moving forward. 1. Friday evening, Sophie invited me to an art gallery opening downtown. She'd been encouraging me to put some of my paintings on display for months, ever since I confessed to her that I'd started taking classes again. At first, I laughed off. The idea my work wasn't good enough, I told her, too amateurish, too personal. But Sophie wouldn't take no for an answer. Art is supposed to be personal, she argued over lunch one day. That's what makes it powerful. People will connect with your story, Mia. Trust me. So against my better judgment, I agreed to attend the event, if only to support Sophie, who'd become one of my closest confidants since the breakup. When we arrived, the gallery buzzed with energy, soft jazz playing in the background, clusters of people chatting animatedly, walls lined with vibrant canvases that seemed to pulse with life. As we wandered through the space, Sophie nudged me toward a corner where a small crowd had gathered around a particular piece. My breath caught in my throat when I realized whose painting they were admiring. Mine. The artwork was one I'd created during a particularly raw moment, a chaotic swirl of blues and grays streaked with bursts of fiery orange and gold. It was messy, imperfect, and achingly honest. Exactly how I felt during those early days after Liam left. This is incredible, a woman murmured beside me, tilting her head thoughtfully. It's like chaos finding beauty. I blinked, surprised by her interpretation. To me, the painting represented pain, the kind that lingers long after wounds have scabbed over. But hearing someone else see beauty in it made me reconsider its meaning. Maybe chaos could lead to something beautiful, something worth celebrating. Sophie beamed at me, clearly thrilled by the attention my work was receiving. Told you, she whispered smugly. You're amazing. For the first time in ages, I believed her. Later that night, as we left the gallery, Sophie looped her arm through mine and said, "You know, Dad keeps asking about you." "Oh?" I replied, raising an eyebrow. "What does he want now?" She shrugged playfully. "Who knows? Maybe he wants to adopt you officially, or maybe he just misses having someone sane in the family." Her teasing tone made me laugh, but beneath the humor lay a kernel of truth. Since our initial meeting, James and I had developed an unlikely friendship, one built on mutual respect and shared frustration over Patricia's antics. He called occasionally to check in, sending updates about Liam, who, according to him, was miserable, and offering gentle encouragement whenever I needed it. Still, the idea of seeing him again gave me pause. Was I ready to dive further into the Carter family drama, or should I keep my distance, focusing instead on carving out a life entirely separate from them? Before I could decide, fate intervened, or rather, Patricia did. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail, printed on heavy cream cardstock with gold lettering. It announced a charity gala hosted by none other than Patricia Carter herself. Beneath the formal details, a handwritten note read, "Mia, please join us. It would mean a great deal to have you there. Patricia." My initial reaction was disbelief. Had she actually written this, or was it some cruel joke orchestrated by Liam? Either way, attending felt impossible, unthinkable. Why would I willingly subject myself to another round of thinly veiled insults and condescension? But then curiosity took hold. What if this wasn't about mockery? What if somehow Patricia genuinely wanted to make amends? Against every instinct screaming at me to burn the invitation, I RSVP'd. Yes, the night of the gala arrived faster than I expected. Dressed in a sleek black gown borrowed from Ellie, channel your inner badass, I stood outside the venue feeling equal parts terrified and exhilarated. Inside, chandeliers sparkled above marble floors, casting prisms of light across elegantly dressed guests sipping champagne and nibbling hors d'oeuvres. I spotted Patricia almost immediately. She looked exactly as I remembered, impeccably coiffed, draped in designer silk, but something about her demeanor seemed different, softer perhaps, less guarded. When she saw me, her lips curved into a tentative smile. "Mia," she said, approaching cautiously. "Thank you for coming." "You invited me," I replied evenly, unsure whether to trust her sincerity. "Why?" She hesitated, glancing briefly at James, who hovered nearby. Then, lowering her voice, she admitted, "Because I was wrong about you, about everything." Her admission stunned me. Wrong? Patricia Carter admitting fault? This had to be a trick. "I don't understand," I said slowly, crossing my arms defensively. "You spent years making it clear I wasn't good enough. And I regret that," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Losing you hurt Liam more than I anticipated, more than any of us anticipated. Seeing him struggle, it made me realize how much damage my interference caused." Her words echoed James's earlier confession, that love sometimes blinds us, that maybe Patricia hadn't acted out of malice, but fear. Fear of losing control, fear of change. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued softly. "Just a chance to start fresh. If you're willing." Fresh starts weren't easy, especially with someone like Patricia, but standing there, watching vulnerability flicker across her face, I understood something important. Growth isn't limited to individuals. Families can evolve too. "Okay," I said finally, extending my hand. "Let's try." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and polite conversation. Liam wasn't there, which both relieved and disappointed me. Relieved, because facing him still felt daunting. Disappointed because part of me wondered if he might have come to apologize in person. As I prepared to leave, James pulled me aside. "You handled that beautifully, he said, pride evident in his voice. Patricia doesn't admit mistakes often. You must have really impressed her. I smiled faintly, touched by his praise. We'll see how it goes. Starting over isn't easy. No, he agreed, but it's worth it. Walking home under a canopy of stars, I reflected on how far I'd come. From heartbreak to resilience, from anger to understanding, from loss to rediscovery. Each step had been painful, uncertain, transformative, and while my journey wasn't over, not yet, I knew one thing for sure. I was enough. Not because anyone said so, but because I chose to believe it. And that belief, it was the beginning of everything.